Welcome to the Happy Lawyer Project. I'm your host, Akoma Mronu, and I created this show to help lawyers find happiness in life with a law degree. Together with my guests, we provide the knowledge, skills, insight, inspiration, and encouragement you need to find you're happy. Today's episode is brought to you by our wonderful sponsors over at Felix Gray Glasses. I fell in love with my own pair of Felix Grays when I was sitting in one of those really long presentations and noticed that I didn't have a headache from squinting to read the slides. Felix Grays are not only wonderful for the eyes, but they're a stylish way to decrease digital eye strain. If you're anything like me, you're familiar with the dry eyes, headaches, and blurry vision that is all too common at the end of a long day of sitting in front of a computer screen. And these glasses have fixed all of that for me. Best of all, folks, over at Felix Gray, they offer free shipping and returns with a 30-day risk-free return policy. If you're interested in learning more, head over to felixgrayglasses.com/happylawyer to let them know I sent you. Back when I lived in Brooklyn, I knew more than one person who fancied themselves a beer brewer. And I'm talking about those kids who are making batches of beer in their bathtub. Don't worry, that's not who I'm chatting with today. On today's show, I chat with Greg McCarthy, who really took things to the next level when he and his friend decided to open up Legal Draft Beer Company. On today's show, we chat about Greg's legal career, what it takes to start a brick-and-mortar product-based business, and we even dive into how Greg finished writing his own fiction book. I hope you guys enjoy. Welcome back to the Happy Lawyer Project. I'm super excited to be introducing you guys to Greg McCarthy. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
So it'd be great if you could start by sharing a brief description of who you are and what it is that you do.
Well, I'm Greg McCarthy. I'm the co-founder of Legal Draft Beer Company. We're a craft brewery in Arlington, Texas. We're located about a mile away from AT&T Stadium in old downtown Arlington. And what I do now for the last couple of years while we've been running this thing is help with day-to-day operations, everything from planning to sales to finance to everything that goes into running a business of our size.
So people who are listening are probably wondering why I have you on. And I think I should mention that you used to be an attorney. So I actually know lots about what you do in Arlington because you're just down the road from me, but would be interested in just starting with your legal career and knowing a little bit about how you ended up in law school in the first place.
Well, first thing is I still am an attorney, still have my license and still have a very, very small mediation and litigation practice. But this all started way back, it was my dad's influence really. When I was going to college, he was not even fairly insistent. He was just plain insistent that I go on and get a graduate degree of some kind. And one of the things that we had talked about was me being a lawyer. And so I thought probably a good idea if I went to work for a lawyer while I was in college, so that even if I wasn't practicing law, I could see what they did, could understand what the day-to-day practice of law was like. So I went to work for a lawyer in Bryan College Station named Bill Vance while I was going to school at Texas A&M, and spent a couple of years just running papers around for him, being general help around the office, all that sort of thing, and then decided I'd go ahead and go to law school and applied to a couple different places and decided to go to Texas Tech.
So you'd be surprised how many people don't actually spend any time with any lawyers or in any legal spaces before going to law school. So it's really great that you had that experience. But even with that experience, were there things that surprised you early in your career about the actual practice of law?
Sure. Even though I had been around a law practice, it was a small one, and it was a real general practice of law. He did everything from wills to contracts to criminal defense, and just a whole smattering of stuff. When I first started practicing law, I came to Dallas to it was a large firm for me. It was a relatively small, mid-sized firm called Coles and Thompson. They've grown since then, but I think we were 40 lawyers at the time. And it was a dedicated litigation practice. And what surprised me most about that was how little time trial lawyers actually spent in court. Most of it was at the desk, making phone calls, doing discovery, writing letters, maybe doing depositions, but very, very little time, relatively speaking, in the actual courthouse.
And had you been interested in the practice specifically to spend more time in court?
Yeah, that was the part that intrigued me the most, the part that I thought I would be best at, and certainly the part that looked to me at the time, and as it turned out later, the part that was the most enjoyable to me. Getting in front of the court in hearings, and especially if you got a chance to try a case to a jury, that was the real fun part of it, the adrenaline rush and all of that stuff that goes with it. So it's one of those things that I wanted to do a lot, and trial lawyers and defense lawyers don't do that a lot.
I would be, just before we transition, there's so many things that you've done in your career and I want to hit them all, but before we transition to kind of your book, which I want to talk about, how did your kind of thoughts about the practice of law change as you work through your career? Because I know you started at the firm and then you've switched around a little, were on your own for a while and then started another firm with a partner.
Yeah, and it your perspective changes, while you're in it, you're focused on serving your clients, running your firm, making a living, supporting your family, all of the things that you would expect. But for me, at least, it was one of those things where I stepped back from time to time and asked myself, was this really what I wanted to do? Is this really the way that I want to do it? Am I happy doing this? And more, I found myself finding less and less happiness in what I was doing. It was a real complicated and developing feeling over time, where part of it was seeming lack of control over what I was doing. If I was doing insurance defense work, I didn't really feel valued by the clients that I was working for, the insurance carriers. I didn't really feel like they wanted or valued my opinion. They didn't really value the service that I was providing them. And I just found myself at odds philosophically with that. When I was doing plaintiff's work, it was probably when I was in the position of most satisfaction. But I always had a struggle with the way to balance that with the way you get your clients. And there's a lot of stuff that is either just downright unethical or that I'm not particularly comfortable with, that a lot of lawyers do to get clients in that field. And I was never really willing to go to cross those lines that I set for myself, and so it was always a struggle to get clients and good cases in that particular field. So, it was just this long developing and continuous examination by me of, is this overall really what I want to do? And ultimately the answer was no.
And why haven't you walked away altogether?
I think it's probably one of those things where I just don't think it's a smart idea for me to surrender my law license and say, never going back again. Never is an awful long time. Plus, after I left my law firm in 2008, I took a self-imposed sabbatical for a while, but I had a great opportunity to get involved in a really, really good case. And because I hadn't given my law license away, and because it was the kind of case that I was interested in, all I had to do was say, sure, I'll help out with that. Whereas if I'd just completely walked away, there'd be no opportunities for me to examine anything that was law related again. And I didn't think that was a wise thing for me to do.
That's fair. And so during all of this time, you also found time to write a book. Can you chat a little about kind of what motivated you? I was reading up on your bio, and you mentioned how you had always been joking about writing a book. And I think a lot of people want to have, write a book at some point in their life. And I'm one of those people who believes everybody has a book in them. What got you to finally do it? And what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time telling people that I was going to write a book, and I wasn't joking. I started and stopped and started and stopped and started putting them on 3x5 cards and trying to write a big outline, and nothing, just over the years, nothing really worked. And then in 2007, I had a paralegal who had written a couple of books herself, and for my birthday that year, she gave me, as my birthday gift, a challenge to write my book, and to do so by participating in National Novel Writing Month. Mm-hmm. It's 30 days, all in November, where the object is to write a first draft, and that's one really important distinction. A first draft of a novel, can't remember these days, it's been so long, I want to say it's 50,000 words, and do all of that in 30 days. And part of the package that she gave me in this, she wrote a letter to me and challenged me to do this, and one of the other things in that box was a copy of a book about National Novel Writing Month by the guy who founded it. And the name of the book that he wrote was No Plot, No Problem. And it was basically what I needed to sort of unlock the realization that what you really need to do to write a book, at least in my case, was to open a laptop, write chapter 1 and start typing. And type as much as you can, set a daily goal, a weekly goal, type that out, even if it's garbage, even if it doesn't make sense, even if you're typing away in chapter 20 and your protagonist is doing all kinds of great heroic things, and you realize that, the guy that he's doing all these things with or against you killed off 3 chapters ago. Just keep writing. And when you get to the end of the first draft, then you can stop writing and you can go back and fix that victim of the protagonist. You can edit later, but if you try to turn out the perfect final draft the first time, you'll never get it written. And so that was the key for me, was just to get that first draft done. And then, as a lot of writers will tell you, that's when the real fun starts, because editing and re-editing and the 7th time editing your manuscript and then having it submitted to somebody else to edit and then getting it back to you and looking like somebody bled all over it. That's the really hard work of writing, is getting it to that final draft where it's right and where it's well done and where it's a good book for someone to read. That's really difficult, challenging work.
I'm really glad that you brought up National Novel Writing Month, because this podcast is going to come out right at the beginning of November. So it'll be right in the middle of, I think they call it NaNoWriMo now.
NaNoWriMo.
Yep. And I'm somebody who's always said I wanted to write a book. And every year I say I'm going to do a NaNoWriMo, and perhaps this interview will encourage me to do it. So maybe by the time people hear this, I will be a couple days into my own writing project.
Well, buy that book and read it, because it's got great, great tips about time management. Take the next, what are we on, October the 21st now? Take the next 3 or 4 days and keep track of what you do during the day. And then look back at that list of things that you do and decide what you're going to have to cut out for a month. And instead of doing whatever that was, watching TV or surfing the web or whatever it is, you're going to spend writing. And it's a good way to remind yourself that you really do have time to do this. It's just a matter of what you're going to be doing with the time that you have.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. And I'm going to take you up on that. I am going to get the book. And I'm not going to commit quite yet, because I don't want to commit unless I'm going to do it. But I'm going to commit to reading.
There you go. There you go.
So that's wonderful. And I know people are still wanting to hear more about Legal Draft Beer Company, because, the last couple of years, craft beer has just exploded. And I know so many people love the idea of starting something like that. And I know that you've done it with friends and family. So I think I'd love to hear what it took to get that company from just an idea amongst friends into a real brick and mortar business for you.
Right. Well, it takes lots of things. First thing it takes is lots of capital. Whether you have it yourself, raise it, borrow it, some kind of combination of all of that, it just takes an enormous amount of capital, because, as it turns out, stainless steel is very expensive, real estate's very expensive, good help from brewmasters and the people who work, that turns out to be expensive. Then you got to couple that with lots of patience, lots of work, and lots of support from friends, family, distributors, retailers, your customers, all that. And you got to then stir all of that stuff that I just mentioned in with a tremendous amount of luck too. Your timing's got to be good. And, timing means, in this kind of thing, from the time that you say, I think I might want to do that, until you open your doors and actually pour a beer, probably going to be 2 to 3 years. So you have to not just have good timing, you have to have good anticipation and foresight. And like I said, a lot of luck. Things have got to go well for you.
I really appreciate that you started with capital, because I think so often in the entrepreneurial conversation, that part is overlooked. Like people act as if the money is the easiest part. And in some ways, the money is the easiest part, because once you have the money, it's pretty black or white whether or not you have it, whereas patience and timing are a little bit harder to quantify. But the money is such a crucial part.
Well, of course it is. And two things. Number one, it's not really the case that once you have it, it's black and white. Once you have it, you better hope that you have enough of it.
Fair point.
Because the old saying is that nearly every business that goes out of business does so because they're undercapitalized. They can't just hang in for a down quarter or a down year or a turn in the economy or something like that. But if you start off with the idea that you have plenty of capital, you need to make sure that you've got really plenty of capital to you, not just, I think we can do this. But one of the things that hits me all the time about the difference between doing this and having a law practice or any other service-oriented business is the difference in working capital that's required. At our law firm, for instance, salaries are expensive and benefits and leases and furniture and all that sort of thing. No doubt that all that's expensive, but an attorney's or a law firm's inventory is really not a problem. You don't have any needs to store lawyers' inventory. Even storage space is different now. You can store it in a fraction of the space that it used to require, and so there are a lot of differences between a service-oriented business like a law firm or a CPA firm and a business like ours or any other manufacturing concern where you have raw materials and inventory and supplies and all that kind of stuff that eat up a tremendous amount of that working capital. You look up and not only do you have your equipment tied up or tying up a tremendous amount of money, but just the things that you have to have if your business is going well and growing in order to be able to service new orders and all that sort of thing is shockingly expensive.
I completely understand. And I think to your point about capital, you hear that all the time, that people don't have enough capital, and people are often very optimistic when it comes to how much money it's going to take to start something, right, and how long it's going to take to be profitable.
Yep.
Previously, you mentioned the many hats that you wear. Is there something you did kind of as you were growing the business to learn all the things you needed to learn, or have you just kind of been learning on the job?
A lot of on-the-job training. I try as hard as I can to take advantage of the people who are willing to share their experience and their knowledge in this industry that I really have no background in, and there are a lot of them. They're very helpful. This industry is full of really sweet, helpful people who are willing to share what they know and what they do with the other people who a lot of people would consider their competition, and they fortunately consider us their colleagues. So I try to read, I try to listen, I try to pay attention to what goes on around me. I try not to be afraid to ask questions, and then I try hard to delegate the things that I am not terribly good at to people who either get to be or are better than I am at those things.
And this might be a really hard question to answer, or maybe not. How do you go about hiring people to do things that you don't yourself know how to do? Like, how do you know if someone is good at a task if you yourself can't do it? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're asking. It's simple and complex all at the same time. I think it's simple in that we try to use the tools, the resources that are available to us in this industry. We've got trade groups and trade publications and websites sort of dedicated to the craft brewing industry. And you can put want ads in there. You can scope the positions wanted, and you can find people who are willing to talk to you about coming to do for you, either on a full-time basis or a consulting basis or whatever you'd like to do. You can talk to folks all the time who want to come and provide services and give you or sell you products, all that sort of thing. Then once you've identified those people, of course, it's no different than any other industry. You interview them, you try to get a feel for them about how they'd fit in. It doesn't really matter what business you're in. I think you're always looking for someone with a high level of integrity with a good work ethic, all of those kinds of things. Then when you find that, you do your job just like you would in any other business, with checking their references, checking their previous employers. In our case, when we hired our brewmaster, we could go taste the beer that he brewed, decide if it was any good. So we did all of those kinds of things and continue to do them as we grow and we have more positions either created or expanded and need more personnel to do more things for us.
That's really good advice. And do you have any other advice that you would share to somebody who's earlier in their career, who's considering taking an entrepreneurial leap?
Well, my advice is probably relatively simple. Whatever you think your capital needs, they're really 2 to 3 to 4 times what they are. So plan accordingly. Be patient. Understand that profitability is a relatively long process to get to. I know, of course, that the things that are true in a law practice or any other service-oriented business they easily translate to the brewery business or any other business. Your word's your bond. You get one opportunity to make a good first impression. Trust takes a lifetime to build, and one bad incident to destroy. All those kinds of things are really tremendously important for somebody to remember, because in a small business that's entrepreneurially based, you don't get to have one person screw up and everybody else sort of take up the slack. Every bobble, every skinned knee makes a whole lot of difference to a small company. And then, I'd just say make sure that you have the support and can count on the support of your family. It's not easy for them, especially if you leave something that's a sure thing. That's if you're in a lucrative position where you're doing really well, you're advancing in your career, you're making a comfortable living. You're not the only person that's going to be affected by this. You need to make sure that you've got the support going in and the continued support that you need from your family.
I think that transitions pretty nicely into your lifestyle. What is that like for you now, and how has that changed kind of through your legal career and then starting this business?
It's pretty hectic right now. It's very, very time-consuming and demanding what we do. Getting a craft beer brand off the ground right now is a real challenge. As you mentioned, craft beer is exploding. And while that gives us some opportunity, more and more people are sort of realizing that there are craft breweries out there, curious, the demand is there, all that sort of thing. There's 4,000 craft breweries in this country now, and it seems like a brand new one opens in Texas every day, which means that there's more colleagues of ours, like I said before, but there's more competition for shelf space, for tap handles in bars, for the attention of distributors and retailers and everybody else. It's a really competitive, difficult time, and so things are busy. I work probably twice as much at this as I ever did in my law practice, and it's not even close. And then to throw not a monkey wrench for sure, but to throw another thing onto my plate while all of this is going on, I've had 2 grandchildren in the last 9 months.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. So life is never dull.
At what point in your career did you have your kids? Was it pretty like middle of your career?
No, I'm really close to the beginning. I was 20. Was I 23? Let's see, May of 86. So yeah, I was 24 years old when I got my law license. My first child was born in August of 87, and my younger one was born in May of 1990. So I was pretty young to both be practicing law and to have a family. So I had little kids and busy practice and trying to make my way up the ladder in my firm and establish my career and all that sort of thing. So I guess the hecticness of family life combined with the busy job sort of thing it's not anything that's new to me.
That's good to know. I'm also somebody, I'm fairly, I would say, early in my career, hopefully, and I had my kids early, and I've always wondered if, I had done things differently, if I would have had more opportunities and options. But it's good to know that, there's lots of ways to do it.
Yeah.
I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask why you decided to go with the name Legal Draft Beer. Well,
when we started this, one of the first things that we did before we had tanks in place and before we were trying to get too far down the tracks, is we wanted to make sure that we had a great a name and identity. The thing that I learned about in that process is something called branding, which I always, just in my simple mind, had thought of as what you did to cattle to make sure that you knew whose was whose. But branding is much different than that. And as I learned in this process, what branding is all about is to have every element of what you do, everything that you have out in front of the public, from PR to T-shirts to names of the beers to logos, brand that so that when they look, they see it and they either see a name or a logo or a T-shirt or something like that, and they instantly tie it all together. And so what we started with is we had to have the name of this establishment tell at least the beginning of the story. Now, my neighbor from a couple doors down is my co-founder here, but this was kind of my original idea, and we thought it worked better to tie the story to me. He's not a lawyer. And the thing that we wanted to convey was something about me that it made it personal, that told that story. We went through a whole bunch of stuff, and we thought about we had 3 or 4 other finalist names, if you will, that we got down to, but they always stalled when we got to, all right, so what does the T-shirt look like? What are the names of the beers? How do they hear that name, look at that can, and then instantly just say, yep, that's Legal Draft. I know them. Or that's, Arlington Brewery or whatever it happened to be. I know who they are and I know what they do. And so we went through that whole process, and this one just seemed to be the best fit of all of those various things. We were comfortable with the story it told. We were comfortable with the way that it looked. And there you have it. People always ask Kurt if he's the lawyer, and he always says, no, Greg's the legal, I'm the draft, and it works out well that way.
Well, I think the branding is phenomenal, and I'm such a huge fan of your Legal Blonde and your Chief Justice Stout. So
Thanks.
I think it's a great brand. And I mean, being a lawyer, I love to support anything with the word legal on it.
Well, thanks. We're pretty pleased with it so far ourselves.
So what do you have coming down the road for Legal Draft? How do you decide kind of how you want to grow the business?
Well, that's really kind of my area of responsibility. I more or less put together the first draft of the plan, and then Kurt and I look at it together. We bring in our brewmaster, and we try to figure out, what of this works the best, what makes the most sense, or any of the ideas that I've put out there just entirely stupid, that sort of thing. And what we've got now coming down the pipe is this. In terms of distribution, we're all over the state, from El Paso to the Valley to Houston to Dallas to the Panhandle. The only major market that we don't have a distribution partner in already is Tyler Longview, and we're already talking with somebody out there about trying to get that relationship kicked off and our beer out with a distributor in that area within the next 3 months. After that, we're looking at the surrounding states, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, maybe a couple beyond those borders over the next couple of years. And then in terms of what we're doing from the beer side, our brewmaster, I should have mentioned by now, is a fellow named Henrik Orlik, and he's not just German-born, but German-trained. He's 62, about to be 63, and he's never really done anything else in his life except brew beer. So we've got something like 45 or 46 years of experience with Henrik brewing beer, and then our lead brewer has another 20 years of experience. So we've got some real well-trained guys up on the brew house with a lot of experience to lean on when it comes to how to do something a little bit differently, how to do something in a really great classic style. All of the stuff with the beer we've got covered with them. So we've got our 6 core brands right now. We've got the Legal Blonde Helles Lager. We've got the Accused Amber Lager of Vienna style. We've got our Hung Jury Hefeweizen, Presumed Innocent IPA, Smash and Grab IPA, and the Chief Justice Stout that you mentioned earlier as our core 6 beers. Those are available in both draft and package, and we're going to keep motoring along with all 6 of those beers. We're about to add a 7th to the year-round line up to those 6. The 7th beer will be something called Free and Clear. It's a blonde lager with just maybe a little hint of orange more than the legal blonde. But the great thing about this one is it will be gluten reduced, and it will taste like really good beer because it is really good beer. We don't start with sorghum or millet or rice or some other grain. We brew our beer as we normally do, and then we use an enzyme to extract the gluten protein so that people with celiac disease and other gluten intolerances can enjoy the beer too without worrying about it making them sick. That'll be out in a can and on draft. It's already out on draft, actually. That'll be out in a can in January. And then we've got a seasonal program. So what we found in this business to be true, what we thought was true, and what we found to be true is that craft beer lovers, they like to see what's new. You know, they have their favorites. Some of them may like the Hefeweizen, and some of them may like the stout. But a lot of craft beer people like to come in or they go in the store and they want to see something new. What do you have that's seasonal? What do you have that's just a one-off? What do you have that's new for me? So every 2 months, starting in January, and actually starting in November, I should say, we'll have a seasonal come out. This November, for Christmas, we have a Christmas beer called Legal Holiday. That'll be available for a couple months until the end of December. Then in January, we'll have a black Pilsner called Black Letter Law. That'll be available for a couple months. Then in March, it'll be the Bach Trial Doppelbock. In May, it'll be the Impeachment Peach IPA. And in July, it'll be a Rattler. We haven't decided on flavor combination or name for that one yet. Then back to September, it'll be Oktoberfest, and November of next year back to the Legal Holiday. So we'll keep those seasonals fresh. There'll be different products on the shelf every couple of months, and then we'll even work in the even numbered months between those seasonal releases. We'll work in specialties and one-offs on draft and in the tap room that are short supplied. Really different sort of beer. We've got a barrel aging program. We've got a lot in the works.
How exciting. And I love that you guys are really staying true to the craft beer culture, because I do think there is a culture around small kind of batch changing seasonal flavors. And I'm excited to get to, and I love the names. I mean, the names forced for me, the punny beer names are, I already wrote down when to go back because I love me a Bach. So,
well, the Bach's fantastic. We had it out in drafts and in limited supply this past spring, and it was just fantastic. Maybe the best beer we've ever made.
That's all very exciting, and I'm excited to head back out to Arlington to give you guys a try. And for anybody who's in Texas or who is traveling to Texas, definitely pick up a can or a whole 6-pack for that matter.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Greg, for coming on the show today and sharing your story with me and my audience. And before I let you go, I just want to ask you my very last question, which I ask everybody who comes on the show, and that is, what do you think separates those lawyers who find happiness from the ones who continue to struggle to find happiness in life with a law degree?
Well, I think the way you phrased the question is a really good one, because to me, the difference between those people is the unhappy lawyers are the ones who think that law degrees must be used to practice law in the traditional way, even if it doesn't make you happy, and or those people who think that the only good reason to have a law degree is because it allows you the opportunity to make a lot of money. On the other hand, it seems to me that the people who are happiest, the lawyers who are happiest, are those folks who realize that a law degree is a powerful tool that can help you to find happiness in your life, regardless of whether you're actually practicing law.
Fantastic advice. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening today. And if you guys enjoyed the show, I'd love for you to share it or head on over to iTunes and leave me a rating and review. I know it's a huge favor, but it's really the best way you can show the podcast some love and help me grow the show. Lastly, I'd love to thank our newest sponsor, Felix Gray Glasses. It's super important to me and my mission here at the Happy Lawyer Project to only share stories, services, and products that I feel will truly help you be wildly happy in your own lives. So I've been really excited about my partnership with Felix Gray. Not only do I feel better since buying my pair, but I've also find it easier to fall and stay asleep. And as a lawyer, you know how crucial good sleep can be. So if you're interested in learning more, head on over to felixgrayglasses.com/happy lawyer to see if they'd be a good fit for you. As always, until next time.